This week on the Digital Marketing Scoop, we're talking with Shane McCarthy all about scaling your marketing. Shane, very welcome to the podcast.
Cheers, thanks, Mark.
So Shane, tell us a bit about what you do and the company you work for.
So I work for a company called Sandboxx. I'm their chief marketing officer. And Sandboxx started off with a very simple mission around helping to connect the military community. Over here in the US, it's a big part of everyday lifestyle, and it's a pretty big group and affinity group and community in its own point. So we do that through letters and through content and technology. So one part of that is you've 17, 18-year-olds that are joining the military. They're not allowed have their cell phones on them. People can write a letter on our app, add a photo, hit send, and then we print and deliver it next day. So doing like digital to physical communication. So we've done about 4 million letters in the last couple of years. We have about 2 million users on the platform. And then we also provide a lot of training content as well for people joining the military. So if you're 90 days out from joining the Navy, we'll send you the content to make sure that you're physically, mentally, and spiritually prepped before you get there, so that you're ready, to kind of to get through your training and kind of fight what you're going to have to come up against. And then we've kind of built out that content along the way too. So we get millions of page views every month on our blog and website with advice for people and families that are joining the military as well.
Wow, that's a very unique offering.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And then the team here is made up of half military veterans and military spouses. So it's been a real interesting process for me too, getting to work with all these like incredible people that have done incredible things in their past careers and are now working help to support other service members and people joining the military as well.
Yeah, and you're from Ireland, aren't you? So how did you get involved with all of this?
Yeah, can you not like pick up on my Kerry accent? More and more not talking to you. So I got involved. I was working in Boston as a software engineer, and our product manager there left and became the chief marketing officer here. And then I kind of bailed with him. He was, I was working in insurance software. He was sending me videos of them doing all this cool stuff on military bases and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this looks like a pretty fun move. So that's how I sashayed into the marketing side of it then.
And when you joined first, was there already a digital marketing strategy in place, or was it like, were they starting from scratch kind of?
Yeah, it was starting from scratch because we were pre-launch. So Sandboxx is on iOS, Android, and now web as well. So yeah, it was pre-launch of the iOS app. So, and the other thing too that was pretty interesting was, this was 2014. You're still only a couple of years after the first iPhone apps and stuff come out. The technology from a marketing standpoint wasn't exactly there. If you were to use some of the platforms, they were incredibly expensive. So there was very little there, not just from the company perspective, but also from like an industry perspective. A lot of company, there was no such thing as doing Facebook app install ads. Like they came along, 6-9 months later. And then all the tracking technology and everything else in terms of the Facebook SDK, that all came along later too. So, we effectively had to build it from the ground up and sort of figure things out as we went along. Very
cool. So are you working yourselves have you built your own marketing team over there? Are you working with an agency? How have you grown it so far?
So yeah, it's been predominantly our own marketing team in-house, and we've sort of grown that team as I guess we've sort of done things that don't scale. You get certain amount of signal on different parts of marketing. Okay, yeah, Facebook ads seem to be doing well, the performance marketing side, so we need to ramp up there and we need to hire someone specifically for that. Our content marketing is doing well, so we need to hire specifically around that standpoint as well. So like on January 1st of this year, we hired an editor because we had a content manager that was running all of our social, digital stuff, was managing a team of writers. And then we're like, okay, this is working out really, really well. We need to scale this. So then we bring in an editor to help ramp up, the written content side of things as well. We do work with agencies around around specific tasks. So In the past, we've done stuff around performance marketing with, digital sides where we just bring in experts. So it's like, hey, help us get up to speed with this. You guys come in, you do this one thing very well. And, how can we scale this? How can we get the tracking stuff in place? There's stuff around, stuff like, one thing that comes to mind is like, Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, stuff like that. Yeah. It's a very niche like skill set. And that stuff is very difficult to do. It's easier just to bring someone in. They can help you get all of that set up. They know how to test if they've done 100 times over. And then once you have the foundations in place, then helping, working with that agency to work with the team in order to get, in order to sort of find the baseline for the moving forward. And we also do stuff in terms of like videographers and stuff like that too. Like your whole camera setup and everything here today, like if we were to invest in that as a company, it would be potentially prohibitive, particularly if we wanted to test just test it and find a signal and stuff like that. So, that's when we've worked with, agencies in the past, and it's worked out, all of that has worked out pretty well, particularly when, you set your goals and you're all on the same page.
So you're kind of striking a nice balance between hiring in-house and working with agencies.
Yeah, and things constantly change. 6 or 7 years ago, some of the agency side, the digital side wasn't, might not have been particularly great. Like people were still trying to, find their footing with some of it. Whereas now I think it has matured a lot. It's still important for an in-house side. Even when we bring people in to do, whether it's our photography stuff or in the past on the digital side, it's still important for our internal team to be able to know all of this stuff. So someone says, we're getting a $20 CPM or, cost per click on Facebook. And I'm like, well, that's not a good metric, because here's where we need to be at. Here is where, other brands in our industry are at. So I think it's important to understand. It's important to understand that too. So you can't just hand everything off to an agency and just be like, oh, they'll figure it out. Like, that's when things can potentially start going bad. And it's the same thing whether it's on marketing or whether it's on a technology side. When you bring in, technology consultants to help potentially develop an app and stuff, if you don't know the right questions to ask, that's when you can potentially end up in trouble and, spending a lot of money, or even more importantly, wasting a bunch of time, because you bring in someone, they haven't done anything for 6 months, and then you're getting worried and you're just trying to make up time then as well.
Yeah. And we'll say how have you found working with the agency from a point of view of holding them accountable and things like reporting and those kind of things? Because I'm guessing, are they dealing with, one key decision maker like yourself the whole time, or are they spread between lots of different departments?
Generally it'll be delegated to like another member of, say, someone else on the marketing team will take point lead. Predominantly, I think where we just try and save ourselves or make sure we're good is just spending that extra time at the beginning, just reviewing the contract. If we need to take a small bit more time, even on our side, mapping out in Excel, like here are some of the key deliverables that we're expecting. That's important. Just setting that expectation of, okay, what does success look like? And then, particularly if you're, well known in the area, in terms of, you all, or, I'm thinking like coming to mind in Cork too, in terms of like on the branding side, with like people that have worked in, in the area for a while, and that they're not just trying to do a 3-month contract and burn you. Like that's an important part. So like the agencies that we work on for the video side and photography and stuff, we'll be working with them for years to come, hopefully, because they want to do the right thing, because they know that we're going to be long-term clients, and then you end up growing both businesses together as well.
Yeah, it's important to have a strong relationship with any agency, no matter what the industry, but in particular marketing, because there needs to be a huge amount of tie-in with understanding the business, understanding not just the marketing team on the other end, but also their relationship with the sales team. And there's a huge dynamic that has to go on there.
A huge amount of trust as well between the two teams as well.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I think a big part of tie-in with that too, particularly from a technology side with us, is like our engineering and product teams and stuff like that. Like if we need to get stuff done within the app, it's important for us to tie in with them too. So the sales side is important, particularly if you're on the B2B end. But with us as well, it's the, working with our engineering team, because, they help us implement all of our tracking. They stay on top of all of that stuff. So that helps to make sure that we're successful as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So at the moment, is there any particular tools you're using as a company that you're finding are working really well for you?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the tools perspective because of how much it changes over time, where the company is. Like I'd mentioned, in 2014. In 2014, we were looking at stuff for tracking app analytics, and there was one company out there, and it was, $10,000 to $15,000 a month for their baseline, and we couldn't afford that at the time. And then a year and a half later, maybe a year later, this platform Fabric came out, and it was all free. There was absolutely everything was free. We could make incredible decisions on how people are using the app, all of that. And then Twitter bought them and then sold them to Google. And then Google effectively closed it down and rolled it into analytics. So it's funny, when you look at tools, particularly, the first thing that comes to mind with tools is just how quickly all of this stuff changes, how quickly all the tools and all that have changed. But so we've been, we started off initially with our CRM side, delivering all of our content through the likes of, Intercom, Irish-based company. That was back in 2014. But then as we scaled and we had to do more revenue tracking and stuff like that, we had to get more and more specifics. And now we're using a company out of San Francisco called Lean Plum that allows us to, do better like cohort analysis, different things like that, where we can measure, the effectiveness of different campaigns. Even if that platform was available in 2014, we wouldn't have been able to use it. Number one, it would have been too expensive, and we didn't have the engineering resources to implement it either. And then, it's really been a case of like, what is it that has helped team members do their best work? I guess looking at it that way. So, we would have originally used the likes of Buffer back in the early days, and then have moved on to like Sprout Social, who I also think have a Dublin presence, where it's like, okay, this is a lot more scalable. It ties in with our customer happiness team, or what we've termed as customer happiness, which is customer support. So they can then use that. They can use that for replying back. So they've been some of the main tools, and then also looking at stuff like AdRoll for doing some of the retargeting. Again, you need to get to a certain amount of scale because a lot of these have minimum spends in order for them to be effective, and you build in the engineering time that it takes to build in these things as well, and vetting all of these platforms. And then, in terms of like with SEO and all this stuff, there's a whole gamut of tools out there for that, I'm not even fully up to date with and au fait with. They're just like constantly changing, constantly tweaking. And again, that's somewhere else that we use an agency for is, we have people in-house that really know the SEO stuff well, but we also have an SEO consultant that helps us with a lot of that too, because it's almost impossible to keep up to date with it and to do the level of experimentation that you need to do as well.
Very interesting. So your marketing budget at the moment, Shane, what kind of way is that split in terms of the different platforms that you're using?
Yeah, so I guess the way that we look at it is kind of as part of the marketing funnel. So, we have our awareness part where, we're probably spending about 15% of our budget on that. It's just getting the word out there. We know that people are going to have to see us a certain amount of times. Like what I like to think back to is, 2014, early 2014, when I was in Boston, and the amount of people that had to tell me about Uber before I actually before I actually downloaded the app. Like it was probably, I think on average, they say it's about 7 people have to tell you about something before you install it. So we do a certain amount there, just that brand building that we keep on top of that. For that, it's predominantly, display ads with some of the display networks, whether it's Facebook or Google. So, you can get those, the CPM on those is relatively cheap in order for doing a lot of that retargeting. And then, so that's the first part of the funnel is that brand awareness. The second part then is on the acquisition side. So because of the way our partnership models are set up, we spend a little less on partnerships than probably most companies do. So we're probably spending about 45% on that. And then about another 40% on, retargeting, retelling our story to people that have visited the site, that have made a purchase previously. So it's sort of, reaching out to them and just staying top of mind, because, they're just getting hundreds of notifications, and people only use 3 or 4 apps on a daily basis. So we want to make sure that we're up there. So part of that is the functionality that we can provide within the app. And then the other part of it is just, how are we staying in front of them? How are we, reminding them in the morning when they're watching when they're reading the New York Times, and we, turn up there. So a lot of that, again, is through the display ads. What's been funny, I guess, with some of the branding stuff and even acquisition is maybe 3-4 years ago, we tried Snapchat ads. They didn't really work out very well. They were just, incredibly expensive. Whereas now, over the last 4 months or so, they've been working really well for us. So again, it's sort of funny watching how these things kind of come around in circles too, and what may not have been good for our audience is now, good for our audience. And then there's other, larger factors, I guess, that, affect that too, just with where demographics are moving to, our ability to track, to sort of do that retargeting, and then, using tools like AdRoll so that we are better able to reach people on the sites that they're using too.
Excellent. Gee, that's very interesting that Snapchat ads have kind of come back around and are working well for you. It's not, I'll be honest, it's not something we've really ever here kind of looked into too much. Did that just crop up that you started up again, or were you constantly testing and it just came right?
So we parked it, and then we started testing again. Similarly originally when we were just doing our letters platform, we were trying Twitter advertising and app install ads there. That wasn't working. The kind of the CPC that we were getting there wasn't great. That cost per click and stuff like that, driving traffic. Whereas now we've started doing it again about 4 months ago, and it's been working out really well, particularly with all of our content. So it's driving a lot of traffic to the content. So I guess on the other side, Facebook has probably increased its cost of cost of marketing and CPMs and all that by about 100% over the last year and a half or so. So it's like that probably ties into what makes Twitter and Snapchat more accessible for us. And then the other thing too is as we're increasing our budget, I think we've been capturing that low-hanging fruit. So now there's still some low-hanging fruit or greenfield within the likes of Snapchat, Twitter. Quora has been doing pretty well. And I think some of it is just the ability to reach out to the right person at the right time. Quora works really well for us because people are asking those questions on there.
That's really interesting, actually, that you bring up Quora, because I actually listened to a podcast recently and an episode completely on Quora, and it's one of those things that I would have never really crossed my mind before to advertise on, but actually it makes perfect sense because people are looking for an answer to a specific question and you advertise directly below it. It's actually a really, really great platform. It's actually something I must look into a little bit more.
I see DuckDuckGo, funnily enough, on Quora constantly. Constantly.
They do.
It is an interesting platform. Again, the traffic volumes, we'll say, compared to something like a Facebook or an Instagram, obviously aren't there, but again, you can get really, really niche and really, really granular with the targeting on it. So exactly. Makes sense.
Yeah, and if your return on investment is good on a platform,
exactly,
it's worth it.
So Shane, if someone was coming into a position like yours, or like you were there a couple of years ago, what kind of tips would you have for them? They're taking over a marketing budget. What kind of tips would you have for them in maximizing it?
I think the biggest part is it's really just experiment. As I've kind of gone through, a lot of these things didn't work in the past. They're now working really well. And then there's sort of also, because I've been in this role for a while, where you come in and you might, and this is a good thing as we've continued to hire people on. They've sort of removed some of our organizational biases, because we might say, hey, that's not going to work. We've done that before. We've done Snapchat ads before. Let's not waste any time or money on those. Let's not get the creative done again and do all of this stuff, because there's an investment there with all of that. So we've kind of been, but when you continue to experiment, you remove a lot of those biases. You're really working off just the data. And then I think the other big part is getting the tools in place so that you can actually track all of that data too. So so you can actually make those decisions. You're not doing it based on just your gut, that you're saying, okay, this is what the numbers are showing. This is what people are interested in. This is what they're clicking on. This is what's driving the whole way through the rest of the funnel that's resulting in a purchase. So, I would say that getting your experimentation framework set up, and then also your data, data tracking, stuff like that in play too, so that you can make well-informed decisions.
I think that's great advice, because I think a lot of people, especially if they're new to an organization, they're probably afraid to make mistakes. And in terms of marketing, in digital marketing, that's the way you're going to learn, is you're going to test different budgets, you're going to test different platforms, you're going to test different ads. Mistakes will be made, but it's through those mistakes you're going to find out what's actually working and what's actually generating the results. Yeah,
and you find out a little bit over time. I mean, it takes that little bit of time at the start where you're going to go, oops. You've made a few mistakes, but then usually what works can translate as you go forward, and it'll keep working for the most part, and then you can just constantly enhance it by experimenting as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what good agency people do as well, is in terms of setting that expectation. I remember back when we were originally talking to our SEO consultant, it was like, hey, this is going to take to set this expectation. It's going to be 90 days before you see any results on this stuff. So it wasn't a case of, them trying to upsell us into a longer term contract. It was more just, we're not going to see the results for 90 days. There's no point in us doing a 30-day trial, per se. So it's good just to set that expectations, with whoever you're dealing with. And if you're coming in new into an organization where it's like, yeah, we can hit the ground running and do as much as possible, but there may not, you may not be able to see results on day one. It takes us time to see, find a signal, see where the movement is on the different platforms, and get a lot of this stuff set up as well.
Brilliant. Shane, if people would like to find out more about yourself or Sandboxx, where should they head to?
So if they just go to sandboxx.com, so Sandboxx with 2 X's, and then the best place to, keep in touch with me is probably on LinkedIn. So just shoot me a message there. It's just Shane McCarthy. You can look up Shane McCarthy Sandboxx on LinkedIn, and it'll come up.
Perfect. And I'll put that link in the show notes as well, so that if anyone's listening now, they can just click on that there.
Shane,
awesome.
Thanks very much for joining us today.
Cheers. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jen.
That's been this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop.